Hello, Ben here from Supercoach Insider, bringing you my final thoughts with the team reveal, or as you can see, a few team reveals, because if you are like me, you are still quite not decided as to which way you're going to go. So I'm just trying to weigh up a few options, and I wanted to kind of give you all of my thoughts because I don't know how it's going to go. Now, luckily, I've avoided Stewart, so thanks to Hawthorn, I'll write you a check for tagging in the preseason. Otherwise, he was definitely on my side. 30-odd% owned, so if you are one of those people, don't fret too much. Also escaped Bruin. Thought I escaped Darcy Cameron, but he actually kind of pulled through pretty well. So it's been a very, very interesting start to the round, and kudos to those who had Nick Dacos. Now, I don't expect that lovely run to continue. We know what he can do when he doesn't get tagged. He got interviewed after the game and said, oh yeah, it was nice to just run around and do my own thing, and then Collingwood outran them and overran them in the end. So I do imagine a little bit more close attention coming to him. Now, the thing that does concern me, though, is when the Pies play Saints, Essendon, Adelaide, Sydney, and GWS in a row, and that comes up, I think it's from mid to end of April, so I am probably expecting some hard attention through that. So, with my side, now, Elliot, you're obviously gone, and I haven't released since that part of it, and I'm trying to stay quite thin because the rookies in that defensive line are still pretty good. Now, I've been publicly quite open and loud with my opinion on McKenna and Wilmot and how I think there's probably only one sort of spot there. So I'm going to explain my thoughts here. Now, Doherty's still there. Ridley, I'm still backing in. Now, if he doesn't look good as far as a little bit more data over 2 weeks, then I can look to pivot from there. Jones is my D3. Now, it is a little bit thin in parts, but there are some strategies I'm having to kind of look at buying myself a 6-week window with some sort of cover from that midfield in case there is something that occurs. And the other strategy I have is kind of even handcuffing McKenna and Wilmot together. So I've been quite public in that I think it probably might be McKenna that makes way when you have, Gardner comes back, Zorko comes back. Then the first out for me, I think, is Dunstall and probably maybe even Robertson, or McKenna could be sort of in that mix as well. So now what I'm going to do is if I handcuff them, I am actually quite confident that at least one of them will play. And if there's an injury to, Rich or Coleman or any of these other players, Berry, even if they want to free, on the wing, etc., then I still expect these guys to be the first ones in. So by handcuffing them, I think I'm going to get at least one of them playing for that first 6 weeks. And one of them just might be a slower burn. So as long as they're not sub, but I still think Sharp is the best sub candidate. Anyone that can run that fast and open-sided, I just think he's the best runner in the competition. So why wouldn't you use someone like him as a sub? And I think also Neil said he is someone to watch for in general. So I expect him to probably get the nod for a sub role. So the first team, I'm going to go sort of 1, 2, 3 and talk about the changes a little bit. Now, what hasn't changed, I'm still got like Lockie Jones, Jinby. I think they're really good options. The change has been McKenna probably in my side with Wilmot to handcuff it. I'm also tossing up whether I want to try and back in Gota. Now, Gota 190,000, a little bit more expensive. Job security is still sketchy though. So I think Archer's an emergency, so he's a bit taller. You've also got, I think, Perez on the sideline who could definitely come into that mix. And then Aaron Hall, I think, played, is it VFL or played a game last week, and he's not far away. So it just depends on whether they're going to back him in as far as Gota. He was a fairly high draft pick, really good foot skills, but also Perez improved last year and got a 1-year contract for foot skills. So I think a little bit of data is needed. I think he could be one that starts off well enough on field, Gota, that we might end up trying to go to him. Goat to him. There's only one goat in my side, and it's definitely not Gota. It has to be Will Setterfield. And thank you for those that have jumped on to that mix as well. So Cowan I had there, and I'm quite glad as well. Some of you, with the news on obviously Phillips going out and McLean not being named, etc., people are like, oh, I'll jump on Hollands. Now, a winger, really good runner, and I thought he did a lot of unrewarded things that I think Carlton will like, and scraped through a fairly good score in the end. So I think if you've got him now, you're kind of all stuck with him, but I think there's probably some better options there. So the first team sort of option, and the differences are, now I've had some reservations on Callaghan, but I think apparently he's not quite over that foot issue and he might be managed, etc. But he's a stepping stone and an attacking winger that might get some CBAs. I still think there's definitely some good options there. And that's why I don't mind having a little bit deeper on my bench and having a Mackenzie on my bench, because if he gets rested or Mackenzie gets rested, then at least that way, if he's on the bench, you have a little bit more security. And the one thing that I've really been paranoid about is security, because if Phillips, who's been in our side all year, has been dropped, or he'll be subbed, sorry, Phillips will be subbed, named very soon, I imagine. And then you got McLean, the same kind of thing. So what about Mackenzie, or what about some of these other fringe players that we're expecting? Like Davey, I'm not sold on Davey. I think the draft expert's actually going on Long instead of Davey, because I think Long has at least the capability to play more midfield or play more up the ground. But I still remember just watching Davey actually pushing up the ground as well. So that kind of gives me a little bit of confidence. I don't like his scoring potential, but, especially when I watched Owies get like 10 touches, a goal, and get 30 Supercoach. So I am definitely worried, but he's highly owned. And that's where the comfort probably comes in, I think, with those sort of players. He's highly, highly owned, and that's sort of what I'm looking at the moment. So Whitfield is someone who is looking to be in my side, only 1% owned. Now, the reason with Whitfield is, again, kickouts, right? Halfback flank. I think he was killing it that first half in the practice match, and then just kind of tail it off and let Ash and these other guys sort of, coming, just run around and do their own thing. But the role's there. It's pretty much like a Dacos kind of role, except he's cheaper. And the reason I was looking at him is because I do think he could be around that top 6 mark in defense. If he's fit, he's got the role. If he holds his health instead, he's someone I think could actually rival sort of like a Sinclair range, or be that F6 sort of D6 mark along with Ridley. So I've got Sinclair dropping out. So that way my D5, D6 is fairly open, and I think those two can kind of go around that 100 range, and that's why I'm sort of picking them based on value. So the reason I like Sinclair is, the reason I like Whitfield is because I don't have to pay $600,000 for Dawson. And every time I try and put Dawson in my side and have 3 strong in my defense, I feel like just the rest of my team's lacking. So what I'm trying to do is go, okay, well, there's plenty of rookies in defense, and fingers crossed if I can do it in front of the camera, and try and do it more that way to shore up some. It's a little bit risky, but have some kind of contingency plans, like, hey, Whitfield coming in possibly round 6. So that way, if things do look a little bit hairy, I can get myself to round 6 and then be able to switch him in back there and then kind of generate. So that's where my whole process is at the moment. I'm tossed between splitting my cash more evenly and having some more expensive players like, say, a Mackenzie or a Sheasel on my bench and providing myself a little bit of security. And the rationale is, if, say, Davey, if some of these other cheap rookies fail, then I'm the one that's actually ahead because my guys are still generating cash. Now, the flip side is that if I've spread myself a little thinner and have more expensive players on the bench, then I'm going to sacrifice some short-term points for that, but I could win in the long run and play the back-end game. So that's the flip side here, and I'm trying to get the right balance between people I think will score well, but also to be able to not lose cash, or at least maybe even make 100, which I'll probably settle for at the moment, and then be able to then wait for other people to drop 100 and then kind of expand and multiply and really capitalize. So Whitfield's one that's there. Setterfield is one that is in my side, and I'm quite lucky that I was tossing up between Fife and Flanders and Bruin. I decided to pass on Bruin, and I'm quite happy I did because he didn't do a very good job. Got some tackles, wasn't really set up for him. I think he still could be a good player, but got pushed out to the wing, and I don't even think it was like I don't think Geelong were going to him as much as an attacking sort of winger, so it didn't really translate as far as his role, I believe. So I avoided that one, so I'm kind of happy there. So Setterfield's still on my side. I think he's only 4% owned. Tall midfielder, I think he'll go to the best player. He is someone who I believe, and he's had runs before of averaging 90 to 100 for a period of games, and I think he's someone that could definitely rack up a period of hundreds. And that's what I'm hoping for, is him to get enough hundreds to kind of go up 100 to 150, and then I can try and flip him from there. It also means that I've got Hopper. Now, like everyone, and Chris had his reservations, he spoke about his reservations, and I did hear what he was saying. And again, he was so highly owned, you don't want to be the person that doesn't go for Hopper. And Chris will tell you all about it on the pod. I want to get snippets of me saying this, that, and the other to prove I was right. And that's, Chris's ego talking. So GWS had some of the largest stoppage numbers in the game, right? I think they were one of the highest, like third highest maybe. Richmond don't like stoppages because they like to keep the ball in motion. They like to keep the ball alive because that's where they get teams. They get them by that fast, erratic kind of style and by moving it on, moving it on, moving it on, moving it on. So they're not really a slow start, stagnate kind of stoppage team. And they had even less. I think they averaged like 83 last year and they had 70 stoppages in the whole game on Thursday night. So that is why he didn't do as well. He butchered the ball as well, looked a bit sluggish and a bit off anyway. So I still think he could come good, but the style that Richmond play isn't going to be conducive to him knocking out those hundreds. So there is a little bit of concern for me. I know Chris is already talking about, hop at a day cost like that night, or last night, should I say. So it's just one to watch. And it's not that he's not capable. I think it's just more the Richmond game plan and style as to whether it will actually translate for more stoppage opportunities, more CBA opportunities, etc. Plus, it wasn't a very high CBA game because there wasn't many goals kicked. So I think that could also change throughout the season. So that's one. Don't be too concerned unless you're Chris and you're looking to sort of get rid of him there. And then Ashcroft McKenzie. So this first team, which I believe is on the left, is where am I? McKenzie. I'm just trying to have a look. So the one on the left is Callaghan. So Callaghan has been sort of in and out of my side. And I'm trying to find which one is I'm actually looking at. Okay, so I think it's this one next to me here. So it'll be this one here is what I'm looking at, I believe. So that way I'm looking at, Ashcroft there, Setterfield, Hopper, and then having McKenzie pretty much just sitting there on field, because I think a lot of people have McKenzie on field. I think a lot of people will have Sheasel on field, so I think that's where the benefit comes in. Now, I don't mind this side. This one's actually got Sin sort of as a loop. Now, I'm not really big for double loops, but because I've tried to really capitalize this team here, and I'll explain that into this forward line, because I'm trying to capitalize on it, I thought, okay, well, if I want points on field, then McKenzie's on field, Sheasel's on field. I've then gone Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Goulden, Cunners, and then Sheasel. So I think Sheasel will be on field for like everyone, and I think McKenzie will be on field for everyone. So to maximize that, I was like, well, there's no more rookies, right? So I needed 160,000 or more to get someone I believe that would be actually half decent for security, and that wasn't there. So I thought, well, if Sin is no longer on the injury list, I could use him as a short-term loophole. He's also someone I think we will have to bring in at some point, so that way I kind of save a trade, but obviously he won't just generate me cash initially. And I'm pretty happy with those mid prices, so I think this could actually get away with fairly well. And the probably key decider on this is how Chesser actually goes. Now, if he knocks out a really good score, then I'll just loop him and McKenzie can go off the field and try and maximize some points on field that way. And I might even sort of do the same with Sheasel, so that way I can sort of see, whether I flip Davey for Sin, and then if Sheasel sort of spuds it, then I can try and, go a different way. So that's pretty much the thoughts there. Now, Cunnington I'm not too sold on. I think he could go really well. CBAs will be there. Concerned Greenwood's in there. I'm also concerned with Zeeble, and I'll explain that one as well, because West Coast have quite a tall forward line. You've got Allen. You've also got like a backup ruck. So I think Williams or whoever might be backup ruck. North Melbourne, and Chris pointed out, or Chris Swizz or Grimo, one of those three, pointed out that North Melbourne don't actually have much height. And Young's emergency, so he's not even going to be part of that height process. And I don't think they have anyone outside of the guy they got from Fremantle, Logue. I think their tallest is 190, which is Gota. Now, that also concerns me because Gota's then taller than, Luke McDonald is taller than Zeeble. But Zeeble and Luke McDonald have also been known to kind of play tall. So does that mean that when that ruck rests and goes forward, who's on him? So does Zeeble have to become a lockdown kind of player, and will that impact him going forward in this game, just this game? So I am a little bit concerned with that as far as that process. And Greenwood coming into that mix, I'm like, yay, Phillips is out, Cunnington in my side. But then I'm like, oh, now they've got Greenwood in. So I'm like, what does that look like as far as that split? And that's sort of the process on that. So I am trying to go a little bit deeper in that forward line mix. Now, that is pretty much one side that I quite like. Now, to flick to the others, and I'm just going to talk about the differences as to the way of thinking. Now, another one where I do have Whitfield in as that sort of M4. I like him. He's 1% owned. So I think that's a really good risk that I'm happy to take, because at his best, he is a top 6 defender, and he could be someone that other people will be looking to get in, and they have a soft run. So if there's a draw where a back flanker could just towel up, like a Dacos, then I could do that. If it doesn't work out, then I could always try and trade him to Dacos. He's not much more, I think 20,000. So I could do that as well as a correction if I need to. Callaghan sort of, been in and out of my side, but I think he's got enough assets for a winger, an attacking winger that might get some CBAs to kind of be able to make me a little bit of money. So that was where that would come in. I think Callaghan comes in and that then pushes Mackenzie to the bench. So does Callaghan get more points than Mackenzie? Maybe, maybe not. The difference being then Cunnington actually comes Fife. So then I would go Goulden, Fife, Siebel would be that difference there. Otherwise, the rest of my team looks very similar. So pretty much it comes down to like, hey, do I want Whitfield and Cunnington with Mackenzie on field? Or do I want, Callaghan and Fife with Mackenzie on the bench? Or do I want Mackenzie and Cunnington and, with Sin? So that's the flip side there. And I think I probably like, Callaghan and Mackenzie more for that little bit of security. Fife over Cunners I don't really like as much, but I think Fife can get away with that first sort of, 6 to 8 week block and, score enough sort of points there. So that way at least I know Fife is a stepping stone and I'm moving him on, whereas Cunnington, you're kind of paying that 420 because you're expecting him to get close enough to that top 6. And that's where it sort of falls short a little bit for me. So that's what I was kind of thinking of. And they're these slight differences. Now, this is another one, which is the one on the far right, or this one over here, depending on whichever way the screen comes out. I don't know how it translates through video. So the last one is a little bit different again. And I really like this team. Now, I like it because it's a little bit different. And I hate it to say, but it's got a little bit of Chris about it too. So, again, Chris can be right every now and then. So, and the reason is, again, I kind of like the security in that it does buy me the 6 weeks. And I'm like, well, if I don't get Whitfield, what can I do? Because the reason I had, and the issue I had with, say Whitfield, etc., was I'm like, if I start him, then I'm like Callaghan and Mackenzie gets pushed to the bench. So I was like, well, having a look what I can do. And then I started to even toss up the difference between, well, hang on, Sheasel, he scored like 70 odd last game, and that's because they pushed him into defense in the last quarter and he got like 10 touches. Before that, he wasn't doing that great. I do like the fact that they play the Eagles and Hawks early on, so I think he might actually start really well for the first 3, but it could be a Rochelle all over again and just stagnate. So my concern is I'm like, okay, so is it worth me paying $50,000 more and going Flanders over Sheasel when I think Flanders could probably average you around 80? Is Sheasel enough? And I know he's going to be on field for a lot of people. So then I start to go, okay, well, can I get more than a 70? Or is Sheasel even going to give me a 70 or make me enough cash? So should I just spend up and try and go another route? So the last kind of thing I was looking at, and I've got another point of difference in this team, and it's more just from gut feel on potential and going with, so like say Whitfield, gut feel, and I hate Whitfield at times, but gut feel says he could do well in that role. And I think there's value there, especially at 1%. And for a $473,000 defender eventually in 6 weeks, who might rival that top 6 and people might want to get in after they have a soft run, he's someone I'd rather start than try and bring in. So the other one is Dersma. Now, I hit up JB from Dr. Supercoach, and he's like, oh, look, if you think 80's enough, etc., but he's not going there. Now, Dersma really fit as well, extremely fit during the preseason, went through and had I think sports science doctors and psychologists, etc., going back to his strengths and talking about the running and taking it on and all of these processes on learning about your body and how he's primed for a big season. And as an attacking winger, he was still actually pushing up around stoppages around the ground, no CBAs, but still getting, I think he got a couple of contested clearances and picked up some contested ball. Port like to play fairly fast as well and aggressive football. So an attacking winger in that style definitely links up and gets some score assists and the rest of it. He had 97 Dream Team and I think 86 Supercoach in the trial game. And I think it's impressive. And he was a high draft pick. He's 280,000. And he's someone I definitely think he goes 80. And JB is right. Is 80 if 80 is enough and you want to go there for 80, then that's fair. Right? Because you can also get 80 from some other people. No one's on him. And I just think he could surprise. He could surprise and push high 80s to a point where Some of these other rookies like Mackenzie might, up and down or, go a 61 week and a 70 or an 80 another. Whereas I think Dersma, I just like his role. I like him as a player. And if we're looking at Callaghan for that attacking winger style, I also like Dersma, and he's 1% owned, which is kind of where going with my gut says to go there. The fact that he's 1% owned compared to others says, hey, you probably shouldn't. The fact that she's also highly owned means that, like, hey, I probably shouldn't, avoid him either. If I had the cash, I'd be going Sheasel over Davey, and I'd just pass on Davey 100%. But again, highly owned, a bench player, hope for a bit of luck. Maybe hope he makes 100 or so, and then I can downgrade 1 or 2 good scores. So in this one, though, to back it up, this would be, so same thing from defense. So Doherty, Ridley, Jones, Ginby, McKenna, Constable, Wilmot, Cowan. So again, using Wilmot and McKenna. So one of those should play. Laird, Bontempelli. Oh, that's the big change. I've got rid of Clary for the first time this preseason. And I've been tossing it up for the last week or so. I got rid of Clary. Now, all the talk about different roles, etc., I don't buy it too much because when push comes to shove, I think they're going to need him in there. So if the game's down to be 1, Clary 100% is your best player. He will be in the guts, right? Make no mistake about it. If there's a top 8 game and the game is to be 1, D's know they need to finish top 4. You have to. In order to win a premiership, you have to be top 4, right? That's what statistics say, and they're backing themselves in for that. So what I'm thinking is if they have a hard run like they do for, say, the first 3 rounds, Clary's going to be in the guts. Now, what does concern me is because I kept telling everyone, like, oh, wow, such a bunny run, round 4 to round 9, it looks super easy. What concerns me is that it's probably on those easier games that he does play different roles. Because what we do know is that the Ds were talking about trying to make sure that they're fresh enough for the back end of the year so they can have a tilt at the finals because they kind of ran out of steam last year. So they're trying to avoid that. And that means kind of winning games in the start of the year without kind of killing your players, making sure that they can actually handle the load to improve and impress to win the grand final and win finals. Just one final, the Ds would be nice. Unlucky. So what I'm thinking is, okay, well, maybe those first 3 rounds, that's pure Clary in the guts because they need those top 8 wins. You then start to play West Coast, North Melbourne, a few of these other teams, and then they go, okay, Clary, we don't need you in the guts as much for these ones because we should get the job done. Now, Clary in these games, even if he has a less CBA split, I still think he's going to go 120 or so as, 65% CBA against the weaker teams because I think he'll be damaging enough and then he will go elsewhere and still do well enough to score 115, 120s against weak opponents. So I think it still does balance out. I still think he goes 120 to 130. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and goes really well initially. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm expecting maybe a couple of lower scores if they're winning and they don't really care too much because they're sort of saving themselves. Then that's where that sort of split comes in. Now, in my ruck line, I've kind of gone wits, and I have been toying up between English, wits. Darcy's never really come into my consideration. I know a lot of people are on him, but that's fine. They do have a fairly soft draw, but not the softest rucks to come against to start. And as you know, I've also looked at Max Gawn. So this scenario that I'm running right now, I can actually afford to go wits to Gawn with Dersma in my side, that is. I'm still tempted, but what it comes down to is that Wits hasn't had an injury this preseason. He's uninterrupted. They play Laddams first up, so I'm actually going to use him probably as my C or VC option this week. I'm probably going into a Dunkley into a Wits this week, or I'm considering going Wits VC and going about it that way. I do think Dunkley has quite a lot of hurt factor. I just think with, if Dunkley coming up against like Rosie, Horn Francis, etc., I think he's going to do well. And he's a big body, tall guy. I don't think Wines is fit enough to kind of go with him. I don't think anyone else really in that Port midfield is probably going to be good enough to stop him. That's just my personal opinion, and obviously Lions biased, so no hard feelings, Port fans. So I just think he's someone that could do really well. I'm not sure if I'm game to put the VC on him straight up, but at least if you do, I expect Wits should probably do well against Laddams. So if I think Wits is probably my captain, I might just go and VC him, and that way if it all fails, I can just go Laird or try and come up with something a little bit different from that. So that's my train of thoughts into this game. So the other one is going through, just to round out this team, Zeeble and Fife. So what I'm considering is putting Zeeble into that F5 bracket and backing in like a Dersma, backing in some of these other players instead of like a Sheasel, etc. So having Zeeble and Fife instead of a so like Callahan, Dersma, etc. in the midfield, 240,000 to $280,000 midfielders I think can get the job done. And then backing them in to go 80 plus rather than me fielding a Sheasel at 70. So what that means is I can go Zeeble at F5, I can go Fife at F6. I'm pretty happy I've got Mackenzie on my bench in my midfield, so I've got a little bit of depth there. And I've got some depth in that defensive line. If there's an issue, I can go Chesser from the midfield back into defense and cover me there. And then it just allows me a lot of moving parts. And the one thing I am heavily considering this season is moving parts. I don't want to get too locked down because with this rookie scenario, if we're having issues now, I don't see anyone on the horizon. Like, who have we got? We got Drury and we've got Sin are probably the only two that have been possibly announced as ones that might play at some stage. What are you going to rely on? A DPP maybe to supplement player to come in at some point? And I know rookies usually do show up throughout the season as injuries present and the rest of it. But it's already looking pretty bleak. And the sub rules making me even feel less secure with these types of players that we might be able to put in our side, and unless there's genuine injuries that will fill up a specific role, I think the sub rules are already going to be hurting people. Now, Cowan was unlucky to get subbed. I think he was cramping 3/4 through. Thought he was impressive enough. The other thing to note as well with the whole Cowan scenario, so it's not good that he cramped, right? But he got through that game, and I didn't think he was too bad. On that, he was also up against Bolton, which I think is a hard enough task to begin with. So being very defensively minded, not having to back your strengths in as much because you're too worried about one of the best, half forwards or small forwards, in the game. So him and Dusty absolutely havoc. So I thought they did well there. The other thing to note as well is that Pitney didn't pass a fitness test. So when Pitney comes back into that side, Cullen's already spoken about Pitney starts in the ruck and De Koning starts forward. And then what will happen is that Pitney will get subbed out and then De Koning will go into that ruck line and finish out the game and be mobile. So I don't think it's going to be an issue long-term as far as him getting subbed out. Again, we've already got him, so I think we can't do much else with that. And by having more expensive players like, Fife, Zeeble, etc., and having those players there, I'm probably more able to shift and flex around. So if, say, Flanders goes really well and Fife doesn't, then I'm going bang, Fife down to Flanders. If say, Ash actually really pops off, then I've got a little bit of money there. I might be able to kind of, correct and go and correct a rookie maybe that I've missed, or try and make a sort of change, etc., and go to Ash. I could also go Dersma to Butcher. What's his name? Warple. So I could also do that as well. So I'm passing on Warple at the moment. I'm backing in Dersma ahead of him, which is about 14% difference. Go figure. And it's just a gut feel thing, so don't read into it too much, but I'm probably going to back that in with a little bit of bank there to be able to make some corrections and sort of pivot and change as I need to. And if Sheasel sort of looks like, hey, he's impressed me with 3 more rounds of data, then I can sort of look to make those corrections as well. And it could be as simple as hey, Dersma or Callahan's not doing well, then I'll move say Fife into that midfield mix, or Fife to Flanders, he can go in the midfield, Dersma can then become Sheasel, and then I've got some money to then throw into Hopper or whatever to get a defensive player or whatever. So what I do like about this is I do like the flexibility where as data comes in and as more players start to drop in cash and my players hopefully make me towards 100, or they do make me 100, then I'm in a really good spot to kind of be really aggressive, because I spoke preseason. My plan is to be very aggressive from say around 6 to 10. Once those DPP comes in, if Max Gorn's there, then bang, I'm targeting him. As soon as I can go for a Clary, I want him. And Stewart, after he's had his drop in price, when he comes back, bang, I'm going there. And I'm hoping, a Dawson or someone gets tagged as well to kind of really use all these mid-prices as a platform. So when I look at keepers, and people I think could be that sort of, top 6 to 10 in their position, depending on forwards, mids, etc. So even this last one, so Doherty, Ridley, so 2, Laird, Bont, Green, right, so that's 5, 2 ruck, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 seems pretty standard. I've kind of gone between 11 and 12, but at least with 11 keepers, I've still got say Zeeble, Fife, Callahan, Dersma, Hopper, Setterfield. and like Jones. So I've still got a lot of potential where I'm not actually relying on any rookies. The only rookies I actually have on field with this last one are Constable, McKenna, Ashcroft, Jinby. So yes, yeah, defensive rookies. And they generally do quite well. So that's me. That's my team. That's my thoughts. Let me know which one you like. And I should probably actually put a label on some of these, like 1, 2, 3. The first one being, obviously, I might put this in writing. And I might actually share this up online as well. So look, that's it. I'm going to go put this up online, premiere it, and come and chat to you in the comment sections as well. So you can ask away, ask your questions, let me know. Please do like, subscribe. And I think even premieres now, you can actually donate as well, which we had the other day as well. So if you like what we do, feel free to also donate. And I think we get most of that back through YouTube, etc. Or hey, if you want to donate some beers, let me know. I'd love a good beer or a whiskey, but whiskey's expensive. Beer's good and cheap for all. That's it. Like, subscribe. Let me know how you go. Let me know what you're thinking. And I'll talk to you soon. I'll chat you in the chat box. I'll chat to you now. Bye.